If you wake up every night to urinate, this is not just part of aging. It could be a silent signal your body is struggling with how you drink water. And what I'm about to share might completely change the way you hydrate, starting tonight. I'm Dr. William Lee, a physician and researcher who has spent decades studying how everyday habits affect long-term health, especially after the age of 50. And here's something most people don't realize. It's not just how much water you drink. It's when and how you drink it that determines whether you sleep peacefully or wake up repeatedly at night. Research in sleep medicine and urology consistently shows that poor fluid timing is one of the most overlooked causes of nocturia, frequent nighttime urination. Now, here's why this matters. Broken sleep isn't just annoying, it increases fatigue, weakens immunity, and even raises the risk of heart and metabolic conditions over time. Most people assume that as long as they drink enough water, they are supporting their health. But what often goes unnoticed is that the body does not interpret hydration in a 24-hour block. It responds to timing. And when fluid intake is pushed too late into the day, the system that is meant to restore you at night is quietly disrupted. You may not feel it immediately, but your sleep architecture begins to fragment. And over time, that fragmentation carries real consequences. Your kidneys operate continuously, filtering blood and regulating fluid balance with remarkable precision. During the daytime, this system is highly efficient because it is aligned with movement, circulation, and hormonal signals. But as evening approaches, your body naturally prepares for rest by adjusting hormone levels, including increasing the release of ADH. This hormone helps reduce urine production at night. But when large volumes of water are introduced late, that balance is overridden. The kidneys are essentially forced to continue producing urine, and the bladder becomes the messenger that interrupts your sleep. I've seen this pattern repeatedly in adults over 50 who were convinced their nighttime awakenings were simply part of aging. One individual, a 64-year-old man, described waking up 2 to 3 times every night for years. He had already reduced caffeine and adjusted his diet, yet nothing helped. The issue was his evening catch-up hydration. Once he redistributed his fluid intake, focusing on the morning and tapering after 6 p.m., the change was noticeable within days. His sleep became deeper, and those nightly interruptions reduced dramatically. And this is where it becomes especially important after the age of 50. Our ability to concentrate urine at night can decline. Hormonal signaling becomes less robust, meaning the margin for error narrows compared to your 30s or 40s. The body is still capable of balance, but it requires a more intentional approach to hydration. A practical way to implement this is to think of hydration as front-loaded rather than evenly spread or back-loaded. Begin your day with a meaningful intake of water and continue steadily through late morning and early afternoon. Then gradually reduce the volume. 2 to 3 hours before bed, your intake should be minimal, limited to small sips. This allows your kidneys to complete most of their workload while you are awake, leaving the night for recovery. There is also a subtle enhancement, pairing hydration with light daytime movement, such as walking or gentle activity. This improves circulation and kidney function, reducing the likelihood of fluid pooling and delayed processing. This combination of timing and movement creates a more natural rhythm, aligning with how your body is designed to function. And here's the surprise, often the issue was never the bladder itself, but the schedule imposed on it. When you give your body the right signals at the right time, it responds with surprising precision. The difference between waking multiple times and sleeping through until morning can come down to a few hours of timing. This video is for educational purposes only. Please consult a healthcare professional before making significant lifestyle changes. Many people feel a subtle dryness in the evening and instinctively reach for a full glass of water, believing they are doing something beneficial for their body. It feels responsible, even protective. But in reality, this habit often creates a hidden cycle that disrupts sleep more than it helps hydration. That sensation of thirst late at night is frequently misunderstood, and acting on it without questioning the cause can quietly set the stage for repeated awakenings. As the body transitions towards sleep, several physiological changes occur. Saliva production naturally decreases. Breathing patterns may shift, especially if there is mild nasal congestion, and certain medications commonly used after the age of 50 can contribute to a dry mouth sensation. These signals can mimic true dehydration, but they are not always a reflection of the body needing a significant intake of fluid. When a large amount of water is consumed in response, the digestive system absorbs it relatively quickly, and within a short period, the kidneys begin processing the excess. The bladder then fills during the very hours when your body is trying to remain in a stable, uninterrupted sleep state. This becomes more significant with age because the body's nighttime fluid regulation becomes less forgiving. Hormonal signals that once helped suppress urine production during sleep are not as strong, which means any excess fluid introduced before bed is more likely to translate into a physical urge to urinate. It is not uncommon for individuals to wake up 1 or 2 hours after falling asleep, not because of a primary bladder disorder, but because of a simple, well-intentioned decision to drink too much water at the wrong time. I recall a 68-year-old woman who described her nightly routine as staying hydrated before sleep. She would drink a full glass of water while preparing for bed and keep another glass on her nightstand, often finishing half of it during the night. She believed this habit was essential for her health, yet she consistently woke up 2 to 3 times to urinate. When we explored the underlying cause, it became clear that her body was not truly dehydrated. It was responding to mild oral dryness and habit. By adjusting her approach, reducing her intake to small, controlled sips, and avoiding full glasses within a few hours of bedtime, her sleep pattern changed within a week. The awakenings decreased and she began experiencing longer, deeper sleep cycles. The key is to shift from reactive drinking to intentional control. Instead of automatically consuming a full glass of water, pause and assess the sensation. If it is mild dryness, a small sip may be sufficient. In some cases, simply rinsing the mouth and swallowing a minimal amount can relieve the discomfort without introducing excess fluid into the system. This approach respects the body's need for balance rather than overwhelming it during a sensitive window. There is also an added layer that enhances this strategy. Breathing through the nose rather than the mouth during sleep can significantly reduce dryness, as can maintaining adequate humidity in the bedroom environment. When these factors are addressed, the perceived need for nighttime drinking often decreases naturally. It becomes less about restriction and more about understanding the signals your body is sending. And this is where a subtle realization changes everything. Not every sensation of thirst requires correction with volume. Sometimes the most effective response is restraint. By allowing your body to transition into sleep without the burden of excess fluid, you create the conditions for uninterrupted rest. What feels like a small, harmless habit can be the very reason your nights are fragmented, and once you recognize it, the solution becomes both simple and remarkably effective. Hydration is often discussed as if it is only about water intake, but in reality, it is a tightly regulated balance of fluids and electrolytes working together inside the body. After the age of 50, this balance becomes more sensitive, and even small disruptions can influence how efficiently your body retains or releases water. What many people don't realize is that drinking plain water in large amounts without considering mineral balance can actually contribute to more frequent urination at night. Electrolytes such as sodium, potassium, magnesium, and chloride act like regulators in your bloodstream. They help control how water moves in and out of cells and determine how much fluid your body holds onto versus how much it eliminates. When this balance is stable, hydration is efficient and steady. But when you consume large quantities of plain water without adequate electrolytes, especially later in the day, your body may interpret this as dilution. In response, it increases urine production to restore equilibrium. And this is where nighttime disruption quietly begins. As we age, kidney function does not necessarily fail, but it becomes less flexible in adapting quickly to sudden fluid shifts. The hormonal signaling that helps retain water at night also becomes less responsive. This means that if your system is slightly imbalanced during the evening, your body is more likely to correct it through increased urination while you are asleep. Many adults over 60 assume this is simply a bladder issue, but in many cases, it is actually a fluid distribution issue rooted in electrolyte imbalance. There was a case of a 71-year-old man who was drinking large amounts of water in the evening because he believed it would flush out toxins and improve kidney health. Despite being well hydrated, he was waking up multiple times every night. When his routine was reviewed, it became clear that his diet was very low in essential minerals. Once his daytime meals were adjusted to include potassium-rich vegetables and moderate sodium intake, while also reducing excessive evening water consumption, his nighttime urination frequency decreased significantly. His body was no longer overcorrecting fluid levels during sleep. The practical approach here is not to reduce water aggressively, but to distribute it intelligently and support it with nutrients that stabilize hydration. Think of electrolytes as the structure that holds water in the right places. Without that structure, water moves too quickly through the system, increasing urinary output. After mid-afternoon, hydration should become more balanced rather than purely volumetric. This means fewer large water intakes and more consistent nourishment through food sources that naturally contain minerals. Foods like leafy greens, cucumbers, bananas, yogurt, and lightly salted meals earlier in the day can help maintain this equilibrium. Even something as simple as not avoiding natural dietary salt completely can make a difference, especially for older adults who are otherwise healthy. When electrolyte levels are stable, the body is less likely to misinterpret hydration as excess fluid that needs to be eliminated during the night. And here is where things become especially interesting. Once electrolyte balance is corrected, many people notice that their thirst itself becomes more regulated. They stop feeling the urge to drink large amounts late in the evening because the body is no longer sending confusing signals. Sleep becomes more stable, not because water intake is drastically reduced, but because the system finally understands how to hold onto the right amount at the right time. Many people who experience frequent nighttime urination assume their bladder has become overactive with age. But in many cases, the real issue is not weakness, it is conditioning. The bladder is not just a passive storage organ, it is highly responsive to behavior patterns, and over time, certain daily habits can unintentionally train it to become more sensitive than it needs to be. One of the most common patterns seen in adults over 50 is what can be described as precautionary urination. This is when someone goes to the bathroom frequently during the day, just in case, even when there is no strong urge. It feels harmless, even responsible. However, what most people don't realize is that the bladder adapts to this routine. Like any system in the body, it responds to repetition. If it is emptied too often, it begins to signal fullness at lower volumes. And once that pattern is established during the day, it often continues into the night. This is where things quietly become more complex. As the bladder becomes conditioned to smaller volumes, the brain starts interpreting mild filling as urgency. Instead of a strong, comfortable storage phase followed by a clear signal, the system becomes hypersensitive. For an older adult, this means waking up at night, not because the bladder is truly full, but because it has learned to ask earlier than necessary. And this learned response can be surprisingly persistent unless it is retrained. There was a 66-year-old man who believed he had a progressive urinary condition because he was waking up multiple times every night. During the day, he was visiting the restroom almost every hour, even when he felt only slight pressure. He had developed a pattern of avoiding any discomfort whatsoever. When his behavior was gently adjusted, encouraging him to gradually extend the time between daytime bathroom visits, his nighttime symptoms began to improve. Within a few weeks, his bladder capacity and tolerance increased naturally, and his sleep became more stable. The key principle here is gradual retraining, not forceful restriction. The bladder, like a muscle, responds best to progressive adaptation. Instead of responding immediately to every mild sensation, allowing slightly longer intervals between bathroom visits during the day helps reset its sensitivity threshold. This does not mean ignoring strong urges or discomfort, but rather distinguishing between true need and habitual response. As the pattern shifts, the nervous system also plays a role. The brain becomes less reactive to minor bladder signals, and the urgency response decreases over time. This is especially important after 60, when nervous system sensitivity can increase due to age-related changes. When both the bladder and the brain are retrained together, the improvement is more stable and long-lasting. And here is something most people don't expect. Once this cycle is corrected during the day, the night often corrects itself. The bladder no longer operates on a low threshold, so it can store urine comfortably for longer periods while you sleep. Many individuals are surprised to discover that their nighttime awakenings reduce not through medication or fluid restriction, but through simple behavioral recalibration. What seems like an unavoidable sign of aging is often just a learned pattern that has gone unchallenged for years. And once that pattern is understood, it becomes possible to reverse it with consistency, patience, and small but intentional changes in daily habits. The timing of hydration is one of the most underestimated factors affecting sleep quality in older adults, yet it plays a central role in whether your nights are restful or repeatedly interrupted. As people age, the body's internal regulation of fluids becomes more dependent on structure and consistency. When hydration is spread randomly throughout the day or shifted too heavily into the evening, it creates a mismatch between kidney activity, hormonal rhythm, and sleep biology. That mismatch often shows up as frequent nighttime urination, even in individuals who have no underlying serious bladder disease. The body operates on a circadian rhythm, a built-in 24-hour cycle that influences nearly every physiological function, including how the kidneys process water. During daylight hours, kidney filtration is more active and efficient, supported by higher blood pressure, movement, and metabolic activity. In contrast, as evening approaches, the body naturally increases the release of antidiuretic hormone, which signals the kidneys to conserve water and reduce urine production. This is a protective mechanism designed to allow uninterrupted sleep. However, when a large portion of daily fluid intake is delayed until late afternoon or evening, this rhythm becomes disrupted. The kidneys are forced to process excess fluid at a time when the body is biologically preparing to slow down. This is especially important after the age of 50 because the amplitude of circadian hormone release becomes less robust. In simple terms, the nighttime protection system is weaker than it used to be. That means the margin for error is smaller. A hydration pattern that was harmless in younger years can begin to create noticeable sleep disturbances later in life. Many people mistakenly interpret this change as a disease developing, when in fact it is often a scheduling issue that has gradually accumulated. There was a 69-year-old woman who reported waking up 3 to 4 times each night for years. She had undergone multiple tests, all of which were normal. The missing piece turned out to be her hydration timing. She would drink very little water during the day due to being busy, and then consume most of her fluids in the evening while relaxing at home. Once her routine was adjusted to distribute water intake evenly from morning through early afternoon and significantly reduce intake after dinner, her nighttime awakenings decreased dramatically within a short period. No medications were changed, no medical intervention was required, only timing was corrected. The practical application is straightforward, but requires consistency. Hydration should be front-loaded, meaning the majority of daily water intake should occur earlier in the day when the body is naturally equipped to process it. Morning hydration supports circulation, kidney efficiency, and cognitive alertness. As the day progresses, intake should gradually taper rather than spike in the evening. By the time bedtime approaches, the body should already be in a low processing state, not actively managing excess fluid. And this is where the transformation becomes clear. When hydration aligns with the body's internal clock, sleep stops being interrupted by biological conflict. The kidneys are no longer working against the sleep cycle, but instead in harmony with it. Many individuals are surprised to discover that simply shifting timing without reducing total water intake can significantly reduce nighttime urination and improve sleep depth. What once felt like an unavoidable part of aging often turns out to be a rhythm problem rather than a structural one. And once that rhythm is restored, the body responds with a level of efficiency and stability that many people had not experienced for years.